Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Girl Get Up podcast. I am your host, the Aquarian Chancellor, and this is the podcast where we inspire you, the listening audience, to go out and pursue your infinite possibilities. I share my story, I bring guests on, they share their stories. And so that is the goal of the podcast. So I hope that you guys are inspired. So now I have a guest. And I'm so happy to have her here. Her name is Marcia Dawood, and she is here today to share with the Girl Get Up audience a little about angel investing. She is an author. She has a book coming out in September, I believe. And she also has her own podcast. She is the host of the Angel Next Door podcast. So I'm excited to hear from her today. Marcia, could you please share with the audience who you are and what you do?
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me. This is exciting. So about 12 years ago in 2012, I was invited to an angel investing meeting. And I remember saying to the person who invited us, "What's angel investing?" I had no idea. I knew that there were entrepreneurs out there and they were doing incredible things, but I thought they were all in Silicon Valley. And I thought that the people who were investing in them were just a whole bunch of rich guys, and that I could never be a part of that. And so I went to the meeting and I was absolutely fascinated at all of the things that people were working on. And at the time, I was living in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania is a pretty happening place nowadays, although it is, of course, known for a lot of its steel stuff that happened back, way back in the day. But I certainly didn't think that there would be a ton of innovation in 2012 happening in Pittsburgh, but turns out there is a ton, and there's even more today than there was then. And I just could not believe how many cool things all of these different entrepreneurs were working on. And I thought to myself, wait a minute, I'm working in this corporate job and I'm kind of like doing the motions, going along, and really not getting as far as I want to get. And I'm not really thinking outside the box, and I'm just kind of going through the motions. So I thought, this is really cool. Like, I'm learning about things I would have never even known existed. And some of the stuff that entrepreneurs come up with, I'm like fascinated that they're even able to think about this. And so I got a little bit more involved, and I started following some of the entrepreneurs and watching them and like helping them with some of their pitching and helping them to work on their business. And I eventually in 2014 moved to New York. And there I joined a group that only invests in women-led companies. And I quickly learned that less than 3% of venture capital funding goes to women, and less than 1% goes to founders of color. So I was just blown away. I was like, what is going on? You can't tell me that women, who are 50% of the population, only have like 3% of the good ideas. And it's just, there's no way. And then, of course, people of color are coming up with all kinds of really cool, innovative stuff. Why are they not getting more funding? So then I went out on a mission to not only help from an investor standpoint myself, but I'm only one person and I'm not a billionaire like on Shark Tank. So I just decided, well, maybe if I can help other people learn and I can help entrepreneurs get even better at telling their story, then we're going to get the money to the people who really deserve to get it so that they can grow their businesses.
First, let's start. I want to talk about who Marcia is and some experiences that you had in your growing up that gave you an indication that you will be in this career path.
Yeah, that's well, I guess I always thought I'd kind of do the thing. I'd go to college and get a job and, do the corporate thing. And then when I met my husband, he worked in finance, and I was just amazed at like this whole world that I was never really exposed to. And I thought, well, wait a minute, I'm like just as smart as some of these guys are, you know, and I might be able to help some of these entrepreneurs. And that's kind of what got me going on this because I always knew when I was growing up, and I would always want to do things like make sure I was working with a charitable organization so that I could help make good in the world. I was always trying to do that. And I thought, and a lot of people think that the main way to give back is to donate to charity. And charities are amazing, but they can only do so much. And the amount of charitable giving in the US actually is only about $475 billion, which is a lot of money.
Yeah.
But that's equivalent to only 1% of the value of the US stock market. So if you think about the amount of money that's going to charities and the amount of money that's actually out there in these big for-profit companies, it's totally different. So if we really want to affect change, we have to help these small entrepreneurial companies when they're small and help them to grow so that then the charitable groups and the for-profit groups can kind of work together.
Yeah. I know for me, starting out on the entrepreneurship journey, you hear a lot about the way that you structure your business. And I think that what, and this is just my personal opinion, that we don't think, well, let me speak for myself. You know what I mean? Let me speak for myself. I did not think 50 years from now when I created that business structure. I just know that I knew there's something that I wanted to do. And I just did it. You know what I mean? My question to you is, knowing that there are angel investors in there, when we're having a strategy when creating our business, what are some of the things that we should think about?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, Investors are looking for businesses that are scalable, and there are a lot of small businesses in this country. The majority of the businesses out there are small businesses, and a lot of them are hairstylists or the dry cleaner down the street or the restaurant or something like that. Those aren't really scalable businesses where you would find an angel investor investing in them. The scalable businesses are the ones that really have more tech or some type of like healthcare piece to it that could really scale and go into a much bigger, broader audience. So things that are happening in a local or even regional area, usually an angel investor wouldn't get too involved with that, but something that could go national or even global, then that's where you'll see more people get involved.
Okay. So then that said, some of the smaller businesses who are looking to maybe let's say apps or something like that, those are the type of technological advancements that angels are looking for to kind of propel us forward as a society.
Yes. Now, it doesn't mean that small businesses, like I just described, like Main Street, we call them kind of Main Street businesses. It doesn't mean that those businesses can't go raise money. They just have to think about it a little bit differently.
Mm,
So, crowdfunding, which I know a lot of people have heard about Kickstarter and even GoFundMe and things like that. Those types of crowdfunding can be very helpful, especially like a Kickstarter. Let's say somebody created something like a really cool new hat or whatever it is, a coffee mug, doesn't matter. And they wanted to get funding for that. They could do a Kickstarter campaign, which would actually mean they didn't have to give any of their equity or any of the ownership of their business away, but they could raise money because they could get people to buy the product early, or maybe they get a discount or a perk. And sometimes people are very patient, or I've found that people on those types of sites are very patient because they know it's new, they know it's innovative, and they get excited because they get to try it first.
mm,
So that's one way. But now, as of 2016, the Securities and Exchange Commission changed things a little bit, and you actually can crowdfund to give away ownership of your business. It's called equity crowdfunding.
mm,
And somebody could crowdfund and give away, some portion. And there's a lot of stuff online that you can read about. And there's a couple of really good sites. Republic.com is one of them. WeFunder.com is another one, where people can go and they can learn a lot about it. The other thing too, and I've seen this a lot with like, let's say somebody wanted to have a coffee shop or a hair salon. They could do what's called debt crowdfunding. So the local community could kind of ban around this
mm,
particular business, and they could maybe invest like let's say $100 each, and you pool that all together, that goes into the business as a loan. So it's not like you're giving away ownership, but you're actually then able to the person who is taking the money, the owner of the business, would actually just pay them back as the business grew and they were able to make money. And again, that's another thing that there's a little bit more patience involved. People aren't like, give me my money back right now. They really are doing it for a lot of reasons. They're not just doing it for a financial return. They're doing it because they really want to see the community grow. They want to see their local entrepreneurs be able to be successful. So there are ways to fundraise no matter what type of business that you have. Because you know what, entrepreneurs, being an entrepreneur is hard. There
Oh,
It is so hard. You have to build your business. You start from scratch. You're like clawing your way to the top. And what I always hate to see is when entrepreneurs are wasting their time just because they just don't know. And
mhm.
it's not their fault. There's so much information out on the internet, and you kind of get overwhelmed, like, oh my gosh, like, how am I going to be able to like sort through all this? What's best for my business? It's very kind of overwhelming and time consuming to figure it all out. So I like to help entrepreneurs just be able to see, okay, things can kind of be in buckets depending on what is best for you. And then if you know kind of that avenue to go down, it can make your life simpler and save you some time.
Yeah, it's not easy. And then stepping out of just your immediate environment is so helpful because sometimes you don't know where to go. And if your immediate environment is not the ideal answer for you and your particular business and your particular idea, you're going to keep doing things that is not going to work. Like, so all that to say is, how do you, or what strategies should you put in place if, as a business owner, and you're looking for that network of angel investors? How do you establish that based on your business?
Yeah, that's a good question too. So I will give you a link to an article that I wrote that was in Fast Company.
Okay.
And it's about how to start relationships early with potential investors if that's the road that you're going to go down. Just to give you an example, I've had people reach out to me on LinkedIn and start the sentence with, I don't know them, and they'll start the sentence with, I need $50,000. What? Okay, I don't know you. Okay, and you're making a lot of assumptions about people just because they invest that they have like gobs of money like laying around or something. I don't know. It just was so strange the first time it happened. And that is not the way to go about building relationships. So the best way I always tell entrepreneurs is you need to start having conversations and building these relationships with potential investors
Mm.
and mentors really early. And that's hard for entrepreneurs because they're like, wait a minute, I haven't built anything yet. And I want to show them when it's done, when it's like perfect, and then I'll go talk to them. But that isn't really how investors think. They want to see the process. They want to see how you handle like kind of everything. How do you handle getting the business started? How do you handle bumps in the road? Because there's always going to be bumps in the road. And then that relationship gets built over time. I actually invested in, with my fund, Mindshift Capital, we invested in a company in 2022 that I had met the founder in 2015. So we built a relationship over a long time before we ever made an investment. So that's tough. A lot of times entrepreneurs, they're like, we need money right now. But the
Mhm.
longer you can kind of just build your business and be scrappy and not take investors, it's actually helping you as an entrepreneur because you're able to retain more ownership of your business, build up to where if you do take investors, they will now help you not with just the mentorship to get there, but then they'll help you with the financial part moving on.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. In your experience, what does what does a business have to have in order for an angel investor to contribute to it? You kind of sort of touched on it a little bit, but could you expound a little bit more?
Sure. I think one of the biggest things is the problem that they're solving.
Mm,
So I've seen a lot of businesses have a solution to something. They're like, look at this cool thing that I made, blah, blah. But if the problem that the customer has, whatever that problem is, if that's not big enough, the solution could be a solution searching for the right problem. But if you have a problem that's really, really big, and now you come along as an entrepreneur and you're able to solve that problem for people, and they will change their behavior because of your solution, now we're talking about something that's investable. But a lot of times, the problem just isn't big enough. So one of the biggest problems I see, and I look at tons of pitch decks that entrepreneurs put together, is they go right into what it is that they've created and why it's so wonderful. But I always go back to it and I ask them, and sometimes I'm like, look, I'm going to ask questions that are like, as if I'm in kindergarten, but that's okay, because I just don't understand why you did this and what the big issue is. Because consumers, we are creatures of habit. So we're going to do things that we're used to. We're not really going to change our behavior or use a new product. I mean, heck, sometimes people won't even change their toothpaste, right? So are they going to really change something else that's really big? I
Right.
don't know. So, but if it's something that is just like, oh, that is just annoys me. It's such a problem. And, like a good example, even though it's a very big example, would be like Uber. Okay. We
Okay.
all hated taking taxis. It was very cumbersome. We did it. We didn't know any better. We kind of didn't have that mentality of like, well, what could be better? And then it's kind of like, oh, somebody might have said, way before Uber was invented, like, oh, what if you could actually just like call somebody and they would just show up at your house and just take you to wherever you wanted to go, right? And you'd be like, wow, that'd be cool. And then all of a sudden, we have Uber now, and I don't know how everybody else feels about it, but I think it's like one of the greatest inventions. And especially for like I have stepsons and they're in college and they take Uber all the time. And I love that because I feel like if they're going to be out and about, and it's late and they shouldn't be driving,
Right.
Anyway, I could go on and on about that, but that's a good example of like you have a problem and it's being solved. Like it was being solved by taxis. We did it. We got around. But now you have the solution that everybody's like, whoa.
Yeah.
That's the factor you're looking for to get investors.
That next level solution. Like,
That's right.
wait a minute, did I see we can do it this way, but we want to take it to the next level.
That's right.
Okay. So what are some of the misconceptions about angel investing that you've heard that you would like to set the record straight about?
Well, first of all, number one is that it's for rich people, and that is simply not true. Um, if you are an accredited investor, it's called, that means that you have a certain amount of income or wealth, then you can invest as much as you want into a company. And the thresholds for an accredited investor, according to the SEC, are you have to have at least $200,000 in income, 300,000 if you include your partner, or $1 million in net worth minus your home. Now, that is a significant amount of money. However, like I was talking about before with the crowdfunding thing, you don't have to hit those thresholds, and you can still invest either through equity crowdfunding or debt crowdfunding. And it could be for as little as like $100 or $200. So there are different ways that people can get involved. And then what I like to see is, the younger generation, they don't have that level of wealth or income most of the time, but they will, they will get older, they will build up, those types of things in a lot of cases. So then you want to be able to say, well, you could try it, and you can try it for $100 as opposed to putting thousands of dollars at risk, right away, because it is a risky asset class. I mean, it's like anything, you want to diversify. You want to have, if you're making investments, and I know there's a lot of people that are out there trading public stocks like on Reddit and things like that. And that's great. But like everything, you want to have a lot of diversity, because if one thing kind of goes down or doesn't do well, then you want to make sure that you don't lose everything. That's the whole point of all this investing stuff, right? You want to help. And, when it comes to private investments, you want to help entrepreneurs, but you also want to make sure that you're not putting money at risk, that if you lost it, you would, be in some type of catastrophic position.
Okay. So as when you started off talking about the percentages of women and underserved communities. How are angel investors and businesses collaborating together to bridge that gap between making sure that they're able have the funding, those businesses, whether nonprofit or for profit, have those funds to help the communities that they wish to serve?
Well, we're not doing it fast enough, I can tell you that. But some of the big problems are, and there's a couple things. We don't have enough investors who look like the people that we want to back.
Mhm.
So there's certainly not enough women sitting at the investment table. There's not enough Black people. There's not enough disabled people. There's not any underserved community. We need more people that look like them writing checks. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they always have to be writing checks out of their own, accounts or anything like that.
Mhm.
Although that's great. But even fund managers. So you'll hear about like venture capital funds and even angel
Mhm.
investing funds, right? Well, those managers are not diverse.
Mhm.
So we need to start to change that too. And I think once we start, oh, I've seen it. Once we start to change the people that these amazing entrepreneurs are pitching to, then the conversation starts because we all have an unconscious bias. And there's biases out there all the time.
Yeah.
But we need to help these entrepreneurs to be able to showcase what they're doing and the amazing things that they're working on. And we need to get them in front of audiences of investors that are very diverse as well. That's one of the things. And then another is just helping them to realize that they can do this, that they're sometimes like, especially with women, because we have the whole baby making thing going on,
Mhm.
that they'll say, hey, oh, are you just going to I just talked to an entrepreneur the other day and she said, some investor asked me, am I just doing this until I have a baby, like as a hobby? And she
Mhm.
was like, no, this is my business. Like I really, okay. So we have to really support underrepresented founders to be able to promote themselves and be like, no, this is my business and I'm going to do this and we're going to scale this and we're going to build it into something big.
Welcome to the Girl Get Up podcast, the podcast that inspires you, the listening audience, to go out and discover your infinite possibilities. You can catch the Girl Get Up podcast every Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts.